Joining us now to break down the state of the 2020 race is Eric Beach, a political strategist and the chairman of the Great American Organization. Eric, when we look at these states right now, whether it be Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the same culprits, if you will, from 2016, do you think that once again these will be the states that the candidates have to go through, have to win if they want to win in 2020?
Yeah, I think so. But this is all about momentum. This idea that, you're going to win one or two states to determine the election. There's no outlier. This is going to be about how President Trump, handles this crisis and how he gets us back to work versus Joe Biden, who eventually has to go out there and campaign. And when he does, is he able to connect with the public? And that remains to be seen.
And when we talk about Joe Biden, too, it's an interesting dilemma to me because in 2016, the extension of the Obama-era policies, you could argue, were rejected in those states. And now they have someone on the top of the ticket, Joe Biden, who is even more so of an extension of those policies, more so than Hillary Clinton was. Will they run into the same obstacles, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I don't agree with the premise that was rejected. I think Trump was accepted. And what we found out was this is a rage against the machine kind of election. And I think we're starting to see that occur this year. What Joe Biden represents is he represents decades of failures by Washington, D.C. versus Donald Trump, who brings an outside perspective. You're seeing, as we're exposing some of the deep state tendencies that occur in Washington, D.C., overreach by the media and some of the elite class. As long as Donald Trump gets back to his core messaging and also still handles this pandemic the way that he's been known to do and bring people together and get back to work, I think he's going to be okay. Of course, we're going to see some of these states in the Midwest really kind of tip the scale. But if Joe Biden can't connect with the public once again, that it's going to be a real tough haul for him.
And when it comes to that, too, I mean, we could talk about how Hillary Clinton didn't campaign in Michigan. We could talk about how her policies just didn't resonate among those voters. And the president very much so did campaign in those states. And his America First, if you will, policies, I would call them more populist policies, did resonate with those more middle class voters, especially the ones in the suburbs, the ones that could swing either way. So if you were advising the Biden campaign, what type of information would you be giving them so they don't repeat the mistakes in 2016? I would assume start by campaigning in the state, right?
I'll start by saying I would never advise the Biden campaign. Just kidding. But Hillary Clinton lost the election. She was out campaigned by the president, and she didn't attend those states. She took even Minnesota for granted, which she barely won. And the president is someone that goes out there and gets into the public space. Biden's been actually fortuitous during the coronavirus pandemic that he didn't have to go out there and try to campaign. That he can kind of lay low. I think his campaign's made some flaws. I think he needs to try to get himself out there and start talking about getting people back to work, not segments of people, not trying to pit people against each other. If he can get back to a middle class message, then he would have a shot. But again, looking at the way that his campaign's handled, certain crises, certain messaging, I just don't see how they're going to do anything different than the old DNC Hillary Clinton win did in 2016.
And when we talk about President Trump's victory, too, a big part of that was the Obama to Trump voters. And I don't think that there's any reversing that at this point. I don't think there's anything that President Trump has done that would make people less willing to vote for him this time around, especially when you see that Joe Biden is on the ticket as well. So, and speaking of that ticket, we are hearing today that maybe Senator Amy Klobuchar is being vetted for a VP pick. We're hearing, of course, the same usual culprits that we've heard in the past, Elizabeth Warren, Stacey Abrams. Doesn't matter who's on that ticket. Do people really care who the VP is in this situation?
Well, I thought Biden made a misstep by, committing to just a woman for the ticket versus saying, we want the best available person to help move this country forward. And if you're going to vet people, that's what you really want. You don't try to do it based on, any kind of stereotype. And so I don't think the VP will make a difference. I will tell you and readily admit, much like President Trump, President Obama was a great campaigner. We haven't seen that from any of the Democratic nominees in 2020 or 2019. And we haven't seen that from Joe Biden. I think the one person I would be scared of as VP would be Michelle Obama. And I just don't think she would take the mantle. So it remains to be seen who he picks, but I don't think it'll make a difference.
I think you're right. I think President Obama was a once-in-a-generation type of figure, the same way that President Trump is a once-in-a-generation type figure. Joe Biden's, I think you can pull those basically from any time. I mean, he's a guy who's been in politics since the 70s. I don't think if you were to take Joe Biden out and replace him with someone else, it would even be that big of a difference. But that may speak to be what 2020 is about, whether or not people are on board with President Trump and his agenda, or if they want to switch it up once again. But that's for the voter to decide. Eric, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Thanks for joining us.